The phone rang just as the knife touched the crisp skin of the turkey, candles casting light on the silver cutlery, the TV in the corner still playing the Cowboys game like every Thanksgiving. I put the knife down, glanced at the screen. U.S. Treasury, IRS. The whole table fell silent. My brother forced a smile. Probably a mistake. Don't pick up. But when I put it on speaker, a calm female voice came through. This is Agent Ortiz. I need to verify a tax liability case in the amount of $487,900, opened under the LLC Harper Design Group LLC, in the name Harper. This call is per the appointment 10 minutes ago with Revenue Officer Ortiz, IRS. I have filed Form 14039 and signed Form 8821 authorizing her to verify information within the scope of my file. Someone's fork dropped. Clink. I felt my heart hit bottom. I have never formed any company at all. At the head of the table, someone sighed as if they had been waiting for this moment to strike my name from the inheritance, to push me into a dark corner with a debt that isn't real. It's just a mistake, my brother repeated. But Agent Ortiz read out every number correctly, stuck fast to my name. Tonight, right here in this dining room, the forged signature will blaze on the TV screen. I have prepared a way for the whole family to see the metadata and the statements indict themselves. Don't look away. I am Harper, and this is the story of my life. No panic, no shouting, no excuses, only opening each envelope, calling each line by its right name, and letting the truth walk on its own 2 feet. Thank you for being here at Revenge and Resolve, where we heal by shining light and reclaim fairness with evidence that speaks. If you believe a single phone call can save a life from a paperwork trap, stay to the end. Hit subscribe to catch the reveal. Press like if you stand on the side of truth, and comment IRS to let me know you're here with me. Thank you for listening with your whole heart. Do you want to understand why the name Harper Design Group LLC could jump out of thin air? I will rewind time a few weeks before Thanksgiving. Mornings in Highland Park always smell of polished wood and leather. In the room hung with cowboy art and photos of the ranch across 4 seasons, I often stand and look at my dad's old spurs, Jack's, hanging next to the frame of him on horseback at first light. I am Harper. I do wood design. My small studio in Deep Ellum is always full of materials. Walnut slabs propped against the wall, steel rulers, wood clamps, and a sketchbook with frayed edges because I carry it everywhere. On Saturday mornings, I run over to Bishop Arts to choose the best boards, sip a strong coffee, and sketch simple live lines for a new table as I walk. On Sundays, I go back to the ranch to check the horse stalls with my dad, smelling hay, hearing the creak of the saddle, and watching the foals run in circles like daytime fireworks. Dad still calls me daughter of wind and wood, then laughs. Girl, after you finish designing the horse stalls for me, remember to get back to Dallas early. This Thanksgiving, I have a family announcement. I look at his sun-browned hands, my heart softening like wood just misted. At noon on the ranch, we sit on the steps, eat hot brisket tacos, the spicy sauce making my eyes sting too, but I still smile because I know I'm in the right place for me. As evening falls, I drive back toward the city, past the tall power poles, past the cotton fields, and through stretches of quiet where only the radio and ideas for a new hanging shelf slip in. I always feel most at peace when my hands still have sawdust on them, my shirt still carries the smell of coffee, and my sketchbook holds strokes that don't need anyone's praise. At the big house, Cole, my older brother, greeted me with a pat on the shoulder that was both warm and hurried. Don't worry, I'll handle your petty tax paperwork. On the console table, a white mailer lay still, the corner stamped CP2000. I glanced at it, and then Cole deftly pushed it into the drawer, saying, "Let me keep that for you." Savannah, Cole's wife, does community PR, very close to the Society Page Press, and always knows which photo will be published. Trent, the CFO of the family office, is usually the one who goes with Cole whenever the family has paperwork. I listened and said, lightly, not because I believed it all, but because I didn't want to argue on a gentle afternoon. Paperwork has always been like that. He does finance, speaks crisply, everyone believes him. As for me, I'm used to reading wood with my eyes and listening to wind with my chest. Numbers sometimes come to me like temperamental horses. They take time to understand. I told myself I'd ask again tomorrow, then went to my room, took off my boots, opened my sketchbook, and kept drawing a recessed staircase for the kitchen. Deep Ellum Studio at night is a different world. I turn on the warm lights, switch on the ceiling fan, and listen to Dallas breathe through the window. The long boards line up like musical notes. I lay my hand on each grain and feel it warm. On Saturday, I run the Bishop Art Streets to find Walnut. On Sunday, I go back to the West Texas ranch to check the horse stalls with Dad. That is the rhythm I choose, simple and straight like a good joinery joint. I don't want to be rich by walls or chandeliers. I want to be rich by durable pieces, by shared Tex-Mex lunches, and by being called by the right name in my own house. At night, I set the sketchbook next to the white envelope, the hesitation of an otherwise calm day. I gently pushed it out of the drawer, and somewhere inside me a small nail tapped, a warning sound. But then the phone vibrated. Dad texted a reminder about the Thanksgiving gathering, telling me not to be late. I turned off the studio lights, locked up, and stepped out to the street. Deep Ellum still had live music drifting from a bar. In my head, Dad's horse stall project was half done. The rest was the reunion dinner, where everyone raises a glass and says what they think is good for each other. I didn't know that a single phone call would shatter that calm mold. At that time, I was still just Harper, standing between wood and wind, believing that if I lived decently, then the paperwork would line up as straight as a beautiful grain. Monday morning, after the weekend at the ranch, I opened the mailbox by the gate to grab a flyer from the wood shop and ran right into an IRS envelope, bold print in the top corner, paper thick in a way you can't mistake. I set it on the table, made coffee, came back, and it was gone. The gate camera suddenly froze, the screen black with a line of error text. Cole leaned on the door frame, hands in his pockets, speaking in a voice light as drizzle. "Probably the wind, I'll check it. Don't worry, I'm used to handling these papers." I nodded, but a grain of sand stuck in my throat. That night, when I opened my laptop at the Deep Ellum studio, the spam folder popped up a strange line, DocuSign completed. I hadn't signed anything. I clicked in. A summary page appeared. The signature looked like mine. But the date and time were when I was driving back to the ranch. I opened DocuSign's audit trail, saw the status completed along with a transaction code. I captured the entire screen and saved it into a receipts folder. My heart knocked against my ribs. I tried to reply to ask, and the email bounced back with a mailer demon warning line. SFX in my head like a groaning printer. Arrgh! Ding. I shut the computer down, turned it back on, just hoping everything was a mistake. The next day, I called the bank to request a credit freeze as a precaution. The polite rep asked me to hold for a moment, the clacking of keys like falling rain. "I'm sorry, Ms. Harper," she said. "We can't process it because the system records a new LLC using your social security number." I stood in the studio, my hands still smelling of walnut, watching the wood floor seem to slide out from under me. I had never formed a company. The window was cracked open, Dallas wind blowing across the drawings so the paper trembled. I suddenly felt the familiar room become strange. I called Cole. He laughed. Small matter. I already talked to Trent. Trent, the CFO of the family office, set an appointment for me that afternoon in an office looking out over a pool that was too blue to be natural. Trent laid the papers on the table like dealing a deck. Here's the best way. You sign a set of retroactive K-1s for the income share. We'll adjust the filings. The IRS will find it reasonable. I looked at him, my eyes catching on the fountain pen set out in weight. In Dallas, everyone is used to letting Cole handle it. For the first time, I felt the pen in my hand weigh that much. I've never participated in any income that would require a K-1, I said slowly. Trent smirked. You benefited indirectly from family assets. Regularizing it is good for everyone. Everyone here seemed not to include me. I put the pen down, hearing a small click like a refusal made of metal. At home, I dug through the drawer. The IRS CP 2000 envelope had vanished. On my phone, the gate camera still said disconnected. I walked down the hallway hung with cowboy art, stopping at my dad's old spurs. Dad used to teach me, when wood warps, steam it, don't force it. I asked myself, what about truth when it's being bent? I screenshotted the DocuSign completed email, saved it in a folder named Receipts. I turned on the printer and printed. The feed made a long whir as the pages came out one by one like floorboards clicking into place. I pinned them to the corkboard in the studio. 1. IRS letter appears. Disappears. 2. Camera down. 3. Auto signature email. Spam. 4. Bank refuses freeze because LLC matches SSN. 5. Trent proposes retroactive K-1. Each line was a small nail I drove in so I wouldn't forget. That night, I brought brisket tacos to the big house, the Thanksgiving table already set. Dad asked quietly, "You okay, kiddo?" I smiled, used an excuse to step outside to make a call. Cold wind pushed the scent of bay laurel into my jacket. I tried calling Agent Ortiz at the number saved in my phone. Voicemail came on, and I left a short message. This is Harper. I didn't form any LLC. If needed, I'll bring everything I have. Back inside, Cole clapped my shoulder. Everything's in order. You just need to sign. The sentence slid off me like a sharp knife knocking a chip of paint off a wall that's been painted over too many times. That night, I didn't sleep in Highland Park. I drove back to Deep Ellum, turned on the warm lights, spread all the papers under the lamp. Email header, bank printout, call list. I wrote a line in the sketchbook, the page meant for furniture now used for a timeline. Courtesy can conceal intent. Timestamps cannot. I closed the notebook, turned off the printer, listened to it stop whir like a soothed breath. Then I texted Dad. I'm okay. Tomorrow I'll come to the ranch. I want to ask you a few things. About the family announcement. The phone buzzed. Dad replied with a short line that was enough to steady me. Stay as straight as the grain you choose. I put the pen back in the cup and felt it lighten. I hadn't won, but I'd stopped trembling. Tomorrow morning, I will find a forensic accountant to examine every log. The next day, after seeing the audit trail show completed, I met her on a sunny Tuesday morning in Deep Ellum, Maya Chen, a petite forensic accountant with bright eyes and economical speech. She set a slim laptop on my walnut table, took a sip of coffee, then asked straight out, "Will you give me access to the logs?" I nodded. Maya opened the DocuSign screen, scrolled down to Audit Trail, the cursor stopping at a line time-stamped mid-workday. Here, she tapped lightly. This IP address belongs to Cole's office building on McKinney. And here, the MAC address of the machine that sent the request matches the CFO's machine at the family office. Timestamp 2:41 p.m. You were driving back to the ranch then, right? I bit my lip, remembering the glare on the straightaway. The printer spun up, "Rrrr," and Maya printed the cross-checks. Audit log, IP lookup, and a photo of the itinerary on my phone. She slid each print into an exhibit sleeve, created a chain of custody memo, and sent a copy to Attorney Whitaker, marking it Preserve Evidence. "We need the truth to stand in rows," she said, snapping a staple in with a decisive click. Next came the bank accounts. Maya opened the e-statement, skimmed through a string of regular transfers from Harper Design Group, LLC, to Cypress Mesa Holdings. "Cole's shell," she said, voice without judgment, pointing to the repeated consulting note. "Split transfers, classic, don't want anyone to notice. But the IRS will look at the total." I felt the wood floor under my feet turn a little cool, and Maya laid out more evidence. A bank camera photo of Trent walking in on the day the first wire was initiated. A wire confirmation email forwarded to the family office domain. And a transaction export with timestamps nearly concurrent with when DocuSign completed appeared in my spam. "The puzzle pieces go like this," she said, placing each sheet onto the timeline I'd pinned on the corkboard. 1. Forged e-signature. 2. Execute wire. 3. File regularization paperwork. On the signatures, she took out a small magnifying glass. "Here's the real Harper on your studio lease." Maya set down the original I'd given her. "And here's Harper on the retroactive K1 they want you to sign." She pointed to the unusually long loop on the R, the stroke heavy then faltering like someone practicing imitation. Forgers are often too careful on the first letters and tired on the last. Here. The baseline also drops. I looked at the ink lines like clumsy saw cuts and suddenly felt tender toward my own signature, the thing I'd treated as a routine ritual after each drawing. Maya didn't stop. "The notary whose seal they sent a photo of. I just called to check the ledger. The signing date is blank. No one booked the service, which means the seal was borrowed." Maya saved the confirming email from the notary office with the ledger page numbers and pinned it into the exhibit. She slid over another USB. "Your neighbor's doorbell camera. They kindly sent the recording from when your gate cam lost connection." The person who entered the yard and took the IRS letter from the box was Cole. Blue dress shirt, timestamp 10:18 a.m. I was silent, feeling my gut cinch. At once, hurt and clear. Maya looked at me, her voice shifting into a warm command. "This is in-house identity theft and a form of fraudulent transfers. If left alone, the IRS will treat you as having received real income with penalties and interest. We'll do 3 things. 1. Capture and print every log, preserve the state. 2. I'll call Revenue Officer Ortiz first, verify that you're a victim, and ask to keep the file in under investigation status. 3. From now on, stay silent with the family office until the exact right moment." I exhaled, for the first time feeling the pen on the table grow lighter. "Harper," she added, "you live by wood. When wood warps, you steam it. You don't force it. Our job is to apply the right heat and time." That line made me want to cry a little, but I only nodded. Adding to the timeline, audit log, Cole, Josh, Trent office, IP, MAC, wires to Cypress Mesa, signature analysis, abnormal R, notary ledger blank, neighbor's ring cam, shows Cole taking the IRS letter. She gathered the stack of papers, slid them into a clear binder, and wrote with a marker, "Exhibits AF." The printer kept running, "Urgh," each page landing like a heartbeat finding its beat. "We'll speak with Ortiz over the phone today," Maya said, "but we send nothing to Trent or Cole. At the right time, we drop the whole set. Let the numbers speak." I looked at my hands, still dusted with sawdust and chalk, then set them on the binder. I no longer felt small in the Highland Park house. I stood in my own studio, amid the smell of coffee and walnut, beside a woman who knew how to line up the truth neatly. When Maya hit dial and stated her name, I heard Agent Ortiz's voice over the speaker, calm, professional. "Yes, we have Harper here," Maya said. "Victim, not the person who formed the LLC." I closed my eyes for a beat, hearing a long-standing door of fear inside me swing shut, and a new door open, where the evidence, at last, was bright enough to illuminate every name. That morning, the family office was cold like a gallery. Gleaming glass, the smell of oiled wood, and the low hum of the air conditioner swallowing all trace of breath. Dad stood before the glass board, marker in hand, the old spurs hanging on the wall reflecting the white lights. He cleared his throat and said, trying to stay calm, "I will adjust the trust. For the time being, Cole will be executor because Harper has open tax liens." He said the last sentence slowly, as if afraid the very words would fall straight onto my heart. I stood by a column, both hands in my coat pocket so they wouldn't shake. Temporary is a word soft as velvet, but when placed on my name, it turns to stone. Cole nodded in rhythm, as if he had memorized the lesson, then flipped the slide. The provisional distribution schedule no longer had my line. I looked at that blank line for a long time, saw it white to a glare, like a winter lake throwing back the sun. I wanted to ask right then why the call from the IRS had become a reason to push me to the margins, when I was the one who went to find the truth myself. But Dad looked at me, his eyes tired and sad. I bit my lip, swallowed the question, chose to stand still so as not to hurt him more. Out in the hallway, Savannah already had her phone in hand. She curled her lip, her voice sweet as cake icing. "You okay, hun? It's only temporary." 5 minutes later, a society page posted a polite caption. "Harper appears to be facing financial trouble. The family is providing support." I read and felt the word support, like a silk collar tightening my breath. Soft but tight. Messages poured in, old friends checking in the social way, clients asking to push the project back until everything is clear, a vendor wanting to re-verify payment standing. In Texas, honor is like a branding mark. One burn in the wrong spot, the whole herd bolts. I sat in the parking lot, listened to the sun drum on the hood in little pops, my hand on the sketchbook as if looking for a hold. In my head pricked Trent's sentence from the day before. Signing a retroactive K-1 is good for everyone. Everyone here, it turned out, was everyone but me. That night, I went back to the deep Elm studio, switched on the warm light and brewed a strong pot of coffee to keep my back straight. On the table, the stack of exhibits Maya had arranged still lay there, quiet as rows of pilings already driven. I reread the timeline, my finger touching each marker like setting beads on fabric. The audit log pointing to the office IP, the MAC of Trent's machine, wires flowing into Cole's shell, the elongated R, the notary ledger blank, the neighbor's ring cam recording Cole taking the IRS letter. Outside, Dallas was loud as every night. Inside, I lit for myself a small quiet. I texted Dad, "I won't argue, I'll just send the file to the people who need to read." He replied briefly, "I hope you'll be kind to yourself." I set the phone down, folded the notebook, and clearly heard my heart relearning the slow beat. The next day, I brought flowers to the ranch. Dad sat on the steps, looking far away. I didn't speak about the trust or the executor. I asked him whether the old horse from the other day was eating well. He told a story about the wind blowing backward, the flock changing direction, then fell silent. I sat beside him, Let that silence settle between us like a clean cloth. I understood there are things I can't hold on to, but there are things I can keep. Clean hands, a clean file, and a clean telling. I went back to the car, opened my notebook, and wrote a line for myself. A break is the moment wood cracks. Don't force it further. Steam, shape, and let it return to straight. I started the engine, drove back to the city, knowing that my honor won't be paid back by rumors but by papers arranged in the right order, and that someday, the very people who turned away will have to come back and read. A week after the IRS placed a fraud hold, in the morning Maya and I sat in the deep Elm studio, the window slightly open, sunlight filtering through wood dust like mist. She set down the slim laptop, dialed the IRS verification number on speaker. Agent Ortiz's voice came through steady and clear, reciting the case number and confirming the fraud hold on the file under my name. I felt the pen in my hand grow lighter, as if someone had lifted some of the weight off my chest. From now on, you're a cooperating victim, Maya said, then noted the timestamp. We moved on to the office side. Through legal counsel Atisha Whitaker, Maya sent a gentle but binding records request. Not a courthouse table pound, just the way a person who knows the law opens the right door. In the afternoon, the server logs came back. Login times, internal IP addresses, a VPN session opened from Trent's machine, and even the badge swipes for the floor at the exact moment DocuSign completed appeared. I drew a pencil line on the timeline. The impact points matched. The next day, Maya said, "Let's take a walk around the truth." We went to the family office building. She started with something I hadn't expected, a trash audit. In the copy room, the shred bin glittered with strips of chopped paper. Maya pulled on gloves, took the pieces that hadn't been mulched, and pieced them back together patiently like fitting mortise and tenon. Half a practice signature sheet emerged, a page full of Harper written over and over, the R stretched too far, the baseline sagging toward the end of the line. I looked at it, feeling as if someone had used my very name to test a pen. "A forger always trains the hand," Maya murmured, placing it into an exhibit sleeve. We continued to a storage unit in Cole's name in Cypress, the place Maya suspected the neatly put-away papers would lie still. The roll-up door gave a soft screech, the smell of old paper mixing with plastic. SFX, a zipper pulling a box cover. On the shelf sat a cardboard box taped and hand-labeled, HDG taxes. Maya handed me another pair of gloves. Slow, clear, correct. Inside were printouts of e-statements matching the wire orders Maya had cross-checked, a registered agent invoice for Harper Design Group, LLC, with the email Ops Family Office, and a slim envelope containing a K1 draft with the date blank, just waiting for a pen to touch down. I photographed each step, logged the time on each shot, and felt my heartbeat return to steady the way it does when reading wood grain. By day's end, Maya moved to soft data, a text backup restored from the office phone. The screen showed a thread between Cole and Trent. "Sign the DocuSign piece for me. Remember to forward the K1. Okay, once the Thanksgiving announcement is done, it's done." Short lines that smelled metallic. I didn't torture myself for having trusted my brother. I looked straight at the timestamps, the way you look straight at a warped board, knowing that forcing it breaks it, only steaming and shaping can save the form. Maya set everything into a coherent montage. Call Ortiz to confirm the fraud hold, pull server logs through Whitaker, pick up the practice signature, open the HDG taxes box, restore the texts. "One thing is missing," she said, closing the binder. "A public point of presentation, where no one can run out of the room, where the people who have let Cole handle it have to hear the numbers read out loud." I looked at her, already guessing what she would say. "Thanksgiving dinner," Maya tilted her head with a smile. Right in the room with the TV on the cowboys, the silverware laid in straight lines, and a speaker loud enough for Agent Ortiz to read every number again. We'll let the metadata, the logs, and the stretched R signature speak for themselves. Not noisy, just true. That night, I went back to the studio, washed the damp paper smell off my hands, and stood before the timeline board. Case, gar and fraud hold, server logs, IP, MAC, VPN hutch badge, shred bin, practice signature, storage, HDG taxes, K1 draft, texts, Thanksgiving announcement done is done. I added a small photo, Dad's old spurs. Under it, I wrote in pencil, "In Texas, honor is like a branding mark. Set the right heat, in the right spot, and it lasts. On Thanksgiving, we set the fire to the truth." Then I turned off the light. In the dark, I listened to the city breathing and saw more clearly than ever. This time, I will walk into the dining room not to explain, but to present. And when the numbers are read out, the only clink will be a mask hitting the floor. The next days pass like a slow but steady conveyor belt. Each morning I made coffee, set my hand on the warm wood surface in the studio, then opened my own honor restoration ledger. I called the 3 credit bureaus in turn, placed fraud alerts, froze the files, wrote the confirmation codes along the edge of the notebook in pencil so I wouldn't forget. At noon, I went into the taxpayer support portal, spoke with someone from the taxpayer advocate. Her voice was calm like a warm towel laid on the shoulders. "Harper, we acknowledge you as a victim. Please file the identity theft affidavit." I opened Form 14039, filled in each box slowly, attached scans of the evidence Maya gathered, then sent it off. Late afternoon, my phone notified me of a new identification code. I drew a line in the notebook. My name now has a layer of lock. No hard terminology needed, just a few steps to reestablish order, like steaming a warped board back to true with heat and patience. At night, I stood before the mirror in the studio's small bathroom, turned on the warm light, set my feet parallel as if standing on 2 rails. I practiced keeping my back straight, shoulders loose, eyes looking at myself without trembling. I counted. Inhale 4 beats, hold 4 beats, exhale 6 beats, until my voice no longer stuck in my throat. I reminded myself, no need to shout. Speak slowly, speak clearly. The truth has its own volume. When tired, I rested my chin on the back of my hand, smiled a little at the mirror as if soothing a stubborn child inside me. On the weekend, I went back to the ranch. The West Texas wind blew gold into the grass. The smell of dry straw mingled with horse sweat. Dad sat on the steps. Lydia, the longtime cook, brought out 2 glasses of iced tea beaded with sweat. "Do you remember the time you wrapped Blaze's leg?" Dad asked, eyes looking far away. I laughed. "I do. I wrapped in the wrong direction and got scolded by Lydia." Lydia chuckled, patting my hand lightly. "Scolding so you'd remember well." We recalled the small things, replacing a stall hinge at midnight, hauling tarps over hay in the rain, watching a mare through the night. Those little stories stitched up the tear between me and the house, not with money or name, but with a family's degree of real. Remembering who was there, remembering which hands did which work. Back in Dallas, Maya sat on the studio floor, back against a slab of walnut, laptop open. "Let's keep the slides simple," she said, eyes bright. The first page was the fake contract they staged. Next, the DocuSign Audit Log, the office IP line, Trent's machine address, the timestamp. Then the flow of funds diagram, arrows from Harper Design Group, LLC, into Cypress Mesa Holdings. Small dots marking transfer dates. We named each page like labeling drawers: contract, log, wires, practice signature, Notary, ring cam. I watched the way Maya worked, crisp yet warm, like watching a woodworker cut with the grain. No overreach, no regret. Late at night, we took an Apple TV to the big house to test AirPlay with the dining room TV. The Cowboys were still on, the speakers carrying the commentator's voice. Maya winked. When it's time, the remote has only the play button. We tested volume, tested lighting, tested the backup Wi-Fi route. I noted, remote battery full, backup saved to USB. By day, I kept freezing credit, sent confirmation to Agent Ortiz, snapped the reply email fraud hold placed, and stuck it onto the timeline board. Maya told me to practice the opener. Thank you, everyone. Before we eat, I'd like 2 minutes to play a short video in lieu of an explanation. I stood at the threshold of the empty dining room, looked at the rows of chairs, imagined the faces, the layered gazes. My heart beat, but it no longer ran. I reminded myself, I don't need to shout, I just need to press play. On the eve of Thanksgiving, I hung Dad's old Spurs back up in the studio like a talisman. I wiped the tabletop, arranged the files, set the USB beside the slide deck as if placing cutlery before dinner. Lydia texted, "Come early tomorrow, kid. I'll save you some mashed potatoes." I smiled my thanks and suddenly felt strangely at peace. Outside, Dallas was still red and green lights. Inside me, a small bright place was patiently growing. I don't need to shout for anyone to hear me. I need to keep my back straight, my eyes steady, my hands unshaking, and at the right moment, press play so the numbers will speak the name of whoever borrowed my hand to sign their trap. Everything is in place. The files, the people, and a tiny remote will do the rest. Thanksgiving night, the 5-minute presentation had been approved by Jack via email. The long table in the Highland Park dining room shone like a warm stage. Smoked turkey giving off a rich aroma, pecan pie glossy like a brown sugar lake, silverware lined up in straight rows. The TV in the corner was at halftime of the Cowboys game, the commentator's voice falling to the floor like a thin drizzle. Jack stood up, his hand trembling very slightly as it touched the stem of the glass, his voice trying to stay steady. "Beaumont family, tonight your father has something to say. From now on, Cole will lead the trust." The sentence swam through the air and settled on each porcelain plate. I felt my back grow straighter even though my chest was roiling. The phone buzzed with a dry ping. Maya looked at me, gave a slight nod, then set the phone in the middle of the table and tapped the speaker button. "I am Agent Ortiz, from the IRS." A calm female voice sounded, softly reverberating against the wall hung with cowboy art. "We are not calling to collect a debt. We are calling because of an irregularity. An LLC using Harper's Social Security number. With your permission, we would like to verify this in front of the family." The whole table fell silent. Jack lowered his glass, his eyes searching for me like looking for a landmark in the desert. I nodded, just briefly, enough to let him know I wasn't hiding. Maya lifted the remote. AirPlay lit up the big screen. A concise timeline appeared, each timestamp like a nail driven into wood. The line, "DocuSign completed," slid in alongside the internal IP address of Cole's office, Trent's machine signature, and a diagram of arrows of money flowing from Harper Design Group, LLC, to Cypress Mesa Holdings. Each arrow stopped at a specific date, not complaining, just pointing straight. Savannah unconsciously stepped back half a beat, her hand bracing the back of a chair. The smell of mashed potatoes, the cinnamon in the pie suddenly turned sharp, like a lie coming too close. I set a gray envelope on the table, pulled the edge slightly to reveal a still image. The neighbor's ring cam capturing the moment Cole stepped through the gate, reached into the mailbox and pulled out the IRS envelope. No one said anything for a long breath. The TV automatically lowered its volume as if it knew it should be quiet. Sweat beaded into lines on Trent's temples. The cream napkin in his hand was kneaded into a wad. "This is a setup," Cole burst out, his voice striving to be hard. "Everyone knows cameras can be doctored." Maya tilted her head without raising her voice. "You can call it whatever you like." The poverty optics trick to paint Harper as in trouble and then cut her out of the distribution. But the audit trail doesn't lie. This IP is your office. The machine address is Trent's. The wires flow into a shell under your name. The notary's ledger is blank on the signing date. And here is the elongated R in the Harper signature on the K1. Each piece alone can be argued, but when lined up, they say the same thing. I looked at Cole and noticed at the corner of his mouth a new crease, the fatigue streak of someone who has pushed too many things with his left hand. I didn't feel triumphant. I only felt that some chord in this house had snapped with a crack, too loud to pretend not to hear. Ortiz on the speaker continued, still even-toned. "We have placed a fraud hold and issued a protection code for Harper's file. Tonight is only verification. If necessary, tomorrow we will work with the family's legal counsel." Jack set both hands on the table, his palms wide like the barn doors at the ranch that used to open for me to come in out of the rain. "Cole," he called. The word son stuck in his throat, like a rein suddenly tightening. "Tell your father, son." There was no more music, no more commentator, only the heavy breathing of a few adults losing their footing right in their own house. I kept my eyes steady, like sighting a straight edge over a warped board. Don't bend, don't fold, just look straight. In that pocket of quiet, I heard clearly my own heartbeat, the beat of someone who doesn't choose to shout, and the small click of Maya as she switched the slide to the money map. Each arrow lit and then went dark, leaving a trail as clear as a branding mark on cowhide. In Texas, honor is a hot mark placed in the right spot. Tonight, the fire here is the fire of truth, and it is touching down on my name to restore its exact shape. 6 weeks after the Thanksgiving dinner, I sat in the deep Elam studio with my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee to steady my breathing, when Maya set a concise sheet of paper in front of me. Agent Ortiz confirms opening a referral to criminal investigation, signature forgery, fraudulent transfers, identity theft. Her voice was calm as always, but in the air there was a small lock that had just clicked. At noon, the local office coordination began. No sirens, no flashing lights. Just a subpoena and a warrant to search devices. Cole was questioned per procedure. Trent proactively cooperated. At the same time, CFO Trent called a lawyer and then changed course. He agreed to cooperate for leniency, his hand shaking as he handed the investigator a USB drive containing practice signature sheets, an email chain, signed DocuSign on behalf, forward K1, and the wire routing table he himself had created. Savannah disappeared from the family group chat, then reappeared with a short statement. "I have retained my own counsel." I read those lines without glee. I only felt a chord in my house snap for good. The crack, sounding late, but clear. Ortiz texted me. "The IRS will recover all unlawfully issued refunds. Harper's file is tagged with a protection code until the case is closed." I nodded, as if nodding to a legal door closing on the right side. In the afternoon, we moved to the remaining branch, Probate Trust in Dallas County. Atarzer Whitaker arranged the files neatly, handed me each page of the petition, asking the court to remove Cole from the temporary executor role, citing undue influence and fraud affecting the integrity of the estate. I looked at the lines as at wood grain. The straighter they are, the more clearly they reveal the places that had been bent. Whitaker said softly, We propose to redistribute according to Jack's revision before the fraud was discovered. Or, if the court finds it safer, return to the original instrument. Either way, Harper's share must be kept fair. In the hallway, Jack took my hand. He stood before the court, his voice hoarse from sleepless nights. My daughter is not poor. She was staged as poor. That sentence fell onto the courtroom's wooden floor and stayed there, like a milestone no one could move. The hearing was brief but heavy. Whitaker presented the forged signature timeline, the office server logs, the wires to Cypress Mesa, the ring cam photo of Cole taking the IRS letter, and Agent Ortiz's affidavit on the fraud hold along with the criminal referral. Cole's side tried to cling to family practice and temporary administration due to tax risk. But when Whitaker laid out the money map, each arrow bright as a branding line on cowhide, the court had no reason left to pretend not to see. The judge read straight through. The court removes Cole Beaumont from control of the trust, appoints an independent supervisor, reaffirms distribution according to Jack's valid intent before the fraud occurred, ensuring Harper's share, opens a civil investigation into interference with documents and undue influence. I stood straight-backed, hearing each clause touch down like planks being screwed into the right place. Not loud, just sure. The ancillary results were announced in lines short but sharp. The IRS proceeds to claw back refunds paid in error. Cole faces civil penalties and restitution. Trent accepts probation, barred from practicing financial management for a period. The shell accounts are closed. The family issued a statement. They will donate to the Texas Identity Theft Coalition to support victims of identity theft, along with an admission that internal oversight failed. I read that release and remembered the night standing before the mirror, practicing to keep my eyes steady. The smell of dry hay at the ranch, and Lydia's loving scold when I wrapped a horse's leg the wrong way. The small details in the end stood on my side. In the evening, I returned to the studio, turned off the big lights, and left only a small amber glow on the walnut surface. I set my hand on the timeline board once more. IRS criminal. Opened, probate os trust ruled. No applause needed, no wine glass. I texted Jack. Dad, I'm okay. He replied, come back to the ranch this weekend. Let's replace the old stall hinges. I smiled, knowing some things will heal by signatures and seals. The rest, by sweat, iced tea, and hands-on work beside the ones we love. In Texas, honor is a hot mark placed in the right spot. Today, the fire of truth returned my name to its own skin. 1 year later, the West Texas wind blows the smell of hay into the lobby of a small library just completed in the middle of town. Red brick walls, walnut shelves measured, cut, and assembled by my own hands. On the newly polished brass plaque, the raised letters are simple. Jack Beaumont Reading Room. Dad stands next to Lydia on opening day, his dress shirt washed to a fade but neatly pressed, his eyes wet because the late afternoon sun pours gold over the herd of quarter horses out in the yard. I hand Dad the ribbon to pull for the opening, hearing the fabric part softly like a door closing on noisy days. Inside, the children's corner has a rug shaped like the map of Texas, reading tables placed right by the windows so everyone can see the blue sky. A shelf set aside for books on woodworking and my earliest drawings. The other corner hung with photos of people who once kept their names clean through storms. I no longer think about late-night calls or cold numbers. The story now lies neatly in a file that's been closed, in the court's decision, in the apology sent, and the restitution returned. I think about Dad's hand on my shoulder, about the glass of iced tea Lydia slips into my hand, and about the children lining up to borrow books for the first time, smiling until their eyes squint. Bent wood is steamed and shaped, never forced, Honor is a hot mark set in the right place, not a scorch from haste. Best revenge, living well. I don't need the label poor or rich. I need my name correct on every piece of paper, and my voice right in the room I built. If anyone asks how I won, I will say, by living straight, keeping careful records, and loving without noise. Thank you for coming with me to this point with revenge and resolve. If you believe that the truth, left long enough, will call its own name, comment 1 below. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Every week we meet to hear a new family revenge, where justice comes by seal and healing comes by hands and sunlight. If this story helps you believe that the truth, left long enough, will call its own name, please leave I choose my seat and a boundary you will set in the next 72 hours. Thank you for staying to the end.